or they give up a Wednesday every single week to be here with you guys. So if you guys can think about it when you're in small group, just thank your leader. Thank them. Tell them how much you appreciate them. Thank you. Especially for those that have been your leader for like the last 5 years, like a Jolene Philbrook, who faithfully comes every single week, or like a Mark Rasmussen, who's been a leader for like the last 6 years and seen groups all the way through, and all my new leaders that jumped in the craziness of COVID. So just tell them how much you appreciate them, especially because I can be really lazy at times and mess up, and they're still here with me. So Kinetic wouldn't be as good if it wasn't for the leaders. So thank them when you guys are in small groups, all right? All right? Thank you. Anyway, thanks, Eli. I appreciate you, man. So we are starting a new series tonight. We just got done with our relationship series about 2 weeks ago, and then, like I said, we had last week off. So we are starting in a new series called Prodigal. Now, Prodigal is based off of a story that Jesus told in the book of Luke. And the word prodigal actually means extravagantly, what's the word I'm looking for? Extravagantly like a failure. And so when we talk about this story, it's someone that who spent a lot of money, who extravagantly basically failed at life, or extravagantly messed up in life. And so in this story, there are 3 different characters that Jesus brings out. And so we're going to be in this series for 3 weeks, and we're going to talk about a different character every single week. And so this is actually one of my favorite stories. It talks about kind of the love of God, the grace of God. But we're not going to talk about the whole story all at once. We're going to do it section by section, so that way you guys have something to come back to. You guys won't know the whole story unless if you read it in your Bibles or if you've read the story before. But before we get started, I do have a story. I grew up in Michigan, and my parents were pastors of a church, and there was a couple that came to our church. I was about 6 years old, and then they had 2 sons. And they were brothers, and I got to know them. We actually became best friends, and that was about 25 years ago. And we're still in contact, not as close as we used to be. But our parents were both pastors at one time, and we were really, really close. I mean, we were best friends. And then as time went on, we kind of hit our rebellious stages, and we were teenagers, wanted to do our own thing, be away from God for a bit. But myself and the oldest brother actually stayed close friends, and we're still Christians to this day. Obviously, I'm a pastor, and he's involved in a church in Hawaii where he's stationed at in the military. But the younger brother, he had his rebellious stage and never really came back to God. And throughout the years, kind of in his early 20s, he was really lazy. He didn't really have a job. He would try to sell stuff on eBay, which can be good if you have a lot of stuff, but he just tried to do enough to get by. He was still living with his parents, and he would work for his dad occasionally, who kind of fixed up houses. And eventually he started selling stuff, not just on eBay. He started selling drugs to try to make some money, and his parents didn't know about that. But his older brother and I did, and we didn't want to rat him out because snitches get stitches. And so he was doing this kind of for a living. And then eventually he started finding stuff that his parents had. And his parents actually had a safe. And in the safe, they had about 20 gold bars. And so for those who don't know how much a gold bar is worth, maybe about kind of a smaller one, it was worth about $40,000 to $50,000. And his parents were going to retire on this. They wanted to be able to sell their home, sell these gold bars, and just kind of live in a cabin up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and just retire there after all the kids are out of the house and stuff like that. So the son knew this, and he found the combination to the safe, and he would go in there and grab a gold bar here or there, not enough to where they would notice right away. And then he would grab this gold bar, and he would sell it for about $3,000 to $5,000. And eventually his parents found out. And if it was my mom, I would not be here right now. My mom would have killed me if I would have did those things. But his parents did something a little bit different. Yes, they were mad and they were frustrated. And especially when they found out how much he sold them for. And he, didn't even buy anything good with it. He bought like some video games and some clothes and an ugly used car. And when they found out that basically he stole away all their life savings and sold it for a fraction of the price, they were upset, and they made him work for his dad for a while until he attempted to pay off a fraction of it. But then they asked him, "What do you need from us? Because there's something here that is messed up, because you're stealing from us. You don't want to go to school. You don't have a job. So what can we do better to lift you up, to come alongside you and love you?" And which is the craziest thing to me, because after seeing your son steal all this money from you and not really care, just keep on doing it, my thing would have been to call the cops. Like, you stole a couple $100,000 worth of gold bars. Like, you need to be prosecuted, or at least be kicked out of the house. And they didn't do that. They didn't call the cops. They didn't kick him out of the house. They still loved him and came alongside him. And I think that around us, we would say, no, like, he needs to be prosecuted. There needs to be a stricter punishment. But they decided to love him through that. And that's kind of where Jesus is at in this story when he talks about this family that is in this book of Luke. And so we're going to be in Luke chapter 15. And I'm just going to read the whole verse, and then we're going to go through it together. And it says, Jesus continued, and he was talking to the Pharisees at this time. We've talked about them for the last few weeks, about who they are. And it says, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. And so he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating. But when he came to his senses, how many of his father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. And I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." Got up and went to his father. And so there's a lot going on. We have 3 kind of different people right now. It says that there's 2 brothers, and then you have the son. And so we're going to go through each verse and try to bring out exactly what Jesus is trying to get at here for this first character that we're talking about, which is the younger son. And so to start off, it says, Jesus continued, and there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my fair share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. And so right here, Jesus is referencing something. He's talking to the Pharisees. For those that maybe don't remember who the Pharisees were, they were these righteous people, thought they were better than everybody else. And so Jesus kind of talking to them, and they know the Bible. Back in that day, in that culture, you had to memorize the Bible at around 12 or 13 years old. And so the Pharisees were the teachers of the Bible, so they knew the Bible really well. And so when he says this man had 2 sons, they instantly remember stories in the Bible, like Cain and Abel, the first brothers in the Bible, where Cain murdered his brother Abel because he was the favorite. Then you have Ishmael and his brother Isaac. And Ishmael tried to kill his brother Isaac because he was also the favorite. And then you have Jacob and Esau, who were 2 brothers, and Jacob stole a birthright from Esau. And a birthright was basically that blessing that you get when your dad or mom is about to die. It's kind of like the inheritance, the will. And so Jesus, he's really reaching his group of people. There's a context here. And when we read the Bible, there's always a context. There's a reason why Jesus is doing certain things. There's a reason why an author wrote certain things. And so Jesus, he's reaching a certain people at this point, and it's the Pharisees. And so when he talks about this inheritance, that this son wanted what was due to him, he wanted this inheritance. In that day, what would happen is that when a dad was getting ready to die, the sons would get everything divided up. And then, they would just go along their way. And normally, what would happen, on a very rare occasion, the oldest son would go to the dad, say, "Hey, I've been around the longest. I want to kind of get my inheritance. I want the part of the will that's mine." And so the dad would look at all he has and kind of estimate how much it's worth, sell some of it, and give it to his oldest son. Never would the youngest son do this because he has to put in his time. He's the youngest. He's going to have to take care of the dad. The oldest son is kind of on his way out. He has a family, wants to get his own life going. And so here, the youngest son is kind of going against everything that this culture is about. And he's saying, "Hey, I want what's coming to me. I want what's mine. I want the money." Not saying he wants his dad dead, but hey, I want to get out of here. I want to live my own life. I want to be free. So then, Jesus continues on. And he says, not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to live in need. And what happened here is that this guy, he wanted to be free. He wanted to do his own thing. He was away from his family. He started buying these nice clothes, started buying the nice cars, started paying for his friends, and if anyone needed money, he would give it to them. Tried to live carelessly. And then there's that famine, which is a famine when there isn't a lot of food grown in the country, because food was a huge resource for people back in the day where they would make money off of it by selling it. There wasn't a lot of jobs like factories, because factories didn't exist. So how you made money, a lot of people would farm or fish. And since there was a famine, it means there wasn't a lot of food. And so this guy, he didn't have any food, and the economy sank, and so he became homeless. And he had nothing for himself. And it's kind of what we do with God, to where we live for ourselves. We are in tune with God, go to church, we go to youth group, we accept Christ, we raise our hands, all that good stuff. And then we want to be free. We want to do our own thing. We want to, have fun, because Christianity, it can be so boring at times. Being a Christian, going to church can be so boring. I don't want to do the right thing. I want to do what I want to do. Or you know what? The Bible said this 2,000 years ago. That's not what it means today. It's so different. So I want to do what I feel is right. That's what the son did. He knew that he should have stayed with his father. He knew that he had a responsibility. He knew that the right thing to do was stay with his dad. He decided to leave. And it's just like us. When we decide we don't need God anymore, we leave. Say, you know what? God, you didn't show up. God, you didn't take care of me. This person died. This person broke up with me. You didn't take care of me. I feel so alone. I don't need you anymore. That's what the son did. And then it says that he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs, and he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. And so Jewish culture is very evident here. We talked about the context and how Jesus is preaching to the Pharisees. He wanted to get them a point, but he's also talking to a Jewish culture. Now, Jews cannot eat pig or pork or anything like that, because it is a very, very dirty animal in their eyes. It rolls around in the mud, and pigs, they poop in that same mud pit, and so they have poop and pee and mud all over them. They're also a hooved animal, and in the Bible, God said, you know what, you can't eat these hooved animals. They're dirty, they're gross. All they do is roll around in the mud in their feces. You shouldn't be partaking in that. And so, they never learned what pepperoni tastes like or sausages or anything like that. They really missed out. But, so for a Jewish man to say, I'm willing to do anything to survive. You know what, I've hit the lowest point of my life, and then it gets lower. And he has to work with pigs, which is the most disgusting thing a Jewish man could do. Because they weren't even allowed to touch the pigs. They weren't allowed to be with them. And this man had to live with the pigs, and so much so that he longed to eat what they ate. Pigs don't eat gourmet meals. They eat rotten food, everything that is left over. And so when they were given food, there was rotten apples, rotten like dairy and stuff like that, and just trash. And he longed to eat that because he was so empty. He was so hungry. And it says no one gave him anything. He was alone. And man, you talk about the lowest point in your life. For a Jewish man, this is as low as it can get. That your best friends are some pigs. Your best friend is an animal. And I know what that's like. My cat is my best friend too. But this man, this Jewish man, he's in the lowest part of his life. He has to be with the dirtiest animal of his culture. Doesn't have a job. Doesn't have anything. Doesn't even have a place to lay his head. And I guess when I think about Christianity, I think about being a Christian and walking away from God, I remember some of the lowest parts of my life. I remember being in a place where I didn't want God. I walked away, especially in college. I remember this moment where I walked away. There was a situation that happened, and God wasn't there for me, or so I thought. So I turned away. And then, I thought, well, I could be happy without God. I can do my own thing. I don't need this relationship with God. I don't need the things that he has to offer. But then I still wasn't happy a few days later. I still wasn't happy a few months later. Still was sad, and I tried to fill it with things. I tried to do things that I thought would make me happy, and there was still this loneliness. And this is where this man is at, this prodigal son. He's in the lowest part of his life, and then he realizes that he has hit the lowest of the low. Without God, without his father, he is lonely. He is in the worst part of his life. And he wakes up one day, and it says that when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father, and that's where we're going to stop in the story. We don't really know what happened after that. We don't know what his dad said. We don't know where his brother kind of fits in. But what I've seen in this is that the prodigal didn't feel like he could be a son anymore. He woke up and it says that he came to his senses, but he didn't feel he was worthy enough to be a son. He remembered his dad, and he remembered living with his dad and how loving his dad was, how gracious his dad was, and he treated people that he hired with respect and care, and they got 3 meals a day and a place to sleep if they needed it. And here he is living with the pigs, eating the rotten food that is left over. He says, you know what, I'm not worthy enough to be a son. I'm not worthy enough to be called your son, but I'm worthy. I think I'm worthy enough to be a servant. But he never really understood grace and mercy of his father. He never really grasped it that he could still be called a son, that he would still be loved regardless of what he did. He thought he wasn't worthy. And how many of us, when we go to God, think we're not worthy? Man, God, I've messed up. I've sinned. I've done this. I've done that. I've been confused. I've been frustrated. I've done some terrible things. You don't want to call me son or daughter anymore. I'm not worthy. I got to fix myself before I come to you. That's not how God operates. That's not how God works. The Bible says that there's nothing you can do to earn the love of God. It's already there. There's nothing you can do to make God love you more. There's nothing you can do to make God love you less. He loves you the most maximum amount of love he can give. And here with the prodigal, he's trying to earn his dad's love. He's trying to win back some type of respect from his father. And he never understood how much his dad loved him. Never understood the grace that was already there for him. And as I call the worship team up, the last part I want to talk about is that maybe you're in a dark place. Maybe you're at the lowest of lows and you're kind of wondering where your life is at. What does this look like for you? Maybe you feel like you're eating with the pigs. Maybe you feel like you're at the lowest right now, that you don't deserve to come back to God. Or maybe you're never really with God. Maybe there was never a moment where you felt like God was for you. I'm going to tell you right now that God was always for you. Even when you ignored him, even when you turned your back on him, God was always for you. There's nothing you can do to make God love you more. There's nothing you can do to make God love you less. That is the beauty of God, that he loves you no matter what you do. And I think that we put God in our relationships like here on earth. And when I talked about that family to where the son stole the gold bars and how his family made him pay back the money that he owed. And we think, you know what, maybe God has to do that. There's something I have to do to win back the love of God. There's something I have to do to make God want me again. I have to earn it. That's not how God works. He doesn't make you earn his love. It's that grace is a gift, nothing we can earn. And so as we go into worship, I want you guys to think about that. Where are you at in your life? Are you on the fence? Are you wondering what God wants with you? And I'm going to be honest, all he wants is a relationship. He doesn't want you to be a certain way. He doesn't want you to come prepared with this 3-point essay. He just wants your heart. And let me tell you that even in my worst moments, the last 3 months have been hell for me. Even in my worst moments were better than the months I thought were my best without God. Because God has been there so much more than I could ever imagine in the hardest parts of my life. So if you are in that hardest part, turn to God. That is my prayer. Because if you leave here and something were to happen to where maybe you're not able to make it back next week because an accident or you passed away, I don't know. I pray that never happens. Where would you go? Do you feel confident saying that you would go to heaven? Do you feel confident saying that you can please God with, I do good things? Or is that, I don't really know. And if you don't know, then I'm always in the back. Come and talk to me. Let's figure this out together. Talk to your leaders. Let's figure it out together. Because I want no one in here to wonder where they're going to go, because hell is real.